Hare Krishna. We are very fortunate. We would like to welcome each one of you by a special seminar by Srila Prabhupada disciples on the special topic Srila Prabhupada in South India. Today with us, we are very fortunate. We are going to have an association of many Prabhupada disciples on this. We are His Grace Vashu Ghosh Prabhu with us, and then His Grace Rashekar Prabhu, His Grace His Grace Harishwari Prabhu is going. So before we start, I'd like to give a short introduction of His Grace Vashu Ghosh Prabhu. Vashu Ghosh Prabhu was born in Chicago, America. He was initiated by Prabhupada, who spent of his 50 years of life in Gujarat. Vashu Ghosh Prabhu being a president of ISKCON temple in Gujarat,
special seminar
to participate in the Sanskrit education competition. He does the white dhoti, just Sanskrit.
special
And
seminar.
just take a minute to mute all. Sorry for that. So, Prabhuji speaks so nice Sanskrit. It was, Indian culture and language that drew him to India when he was just 16 years old. So we are very fortunate to have His Grace Vasu Ghosh Prabhu with us. Let us welcome him by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, Prabhu.
Right. I wanted to, since Gaur Purnima is coming, I'm going to recite one verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita to begin, if you don't mind. Anarpita charim chirat karunayavatirnach kalo samarpaitum unnatojvala rasam swabhakti shriyam harif purata sundara dyuti kadamba sandipitas sada hridaya kandare spuratu va sachinandanaha. Tomorrow being Gaur Purnima, I thought I should recite that. Namaum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarane. Since this is a memories program of Srila Prabhupada, I thought I should recite the Prabhupada Pranam mantra. I could recite a number of other mantras, but time constraints. Due to time constraints, I won't. I came, let's see, for the record, for the viewers, I came to Hyderabad in April of 1974. So it's almost April of 2021. So how many years is that? 46, 47, 47 years. Where did the time go? Due to modern technology, we have some records of Prabhupada's visit to Hyderabad, because I came to Hyderabad from Juhu, from Bombay ISKCON. Prabhupada was there. And when I came to Hyderabad, I was a very young devotee. I had just about completing my 19. In India, you say 19 completed, 20 running. I was about to complete at the age of 19. Came to India 18. I was 18. It means 18 completed, 19 running. And when I came to Hyderabad, 19 got completed and 20 started, because I was born 1955 April. It's actually Chaitra Shukla Chaturdashi, after Ram Navami. That's my appearance day on the Vedic calendar. So I arrived and Prabhupada came. I didn't know in Bombay that Prabhupada was coming to Hyderabad. You know, it wasn't announced. We weren't informed. Nobody told me, so I was surprised. And there were 5 days of Prabhupada's public lectures. There was a ground near Nampally station. I don't know if that ground still exists. It's possible. You would know better, those who reside in Hyderabad and those who are in the Abbot's Temple. Ended up, I stayed in Abbot's Temple from 1974 April till 1979. End of February, beginning of March, I went to Mayapur, and I didn't return. And that's 42 years away from Hyderabad. So my remembrance of that, Prabhupada gave the lectures in the evening. We didn't associate with him in the day. The Abbot's Temple was a hole in the ground at that time. Construction had started. Now, to give you a little perspective of the time of the construction, the labor was paid 4 rupees a day for the men and 2 rupees a day for the women. Yeah, how much is it now? 300, 350, 400, maybe more. I don't know.
700.
700? My God. I remember we were paying our accountant. I can't even remember his name now. He was a young guy, and 400 rupees a month was his salary. So it gives you a little perspective. We were getting 10 rupees a day to go out to make life members after Prabhupada left. Anyway, one thing I remember was that Shyam Sundar, who you might know, you might have heard his name. He was one of the first people to join ISKCON in San Francisco in 1967. He had a business partnership with a Gujarati fellow in Sultan Bazar, Gujarati family. They had a business partnership in mining. And apparently Shyam Sundar owed them some money. And I remember hearing that Prabhupada asked those people to please be lenient with Shyam Sundar. I remember this. Also, you might have heard the name of Hari Prasad Badruka, who passed away recently. I think he was 91 years old. And he's the one who originally donated the Medchil farm, Dabalpur farm. Later on, he took it back. And now ISKCON has 50 acres out of 565 that he gave to Prabhupada. It's a long story. But we had a prasad in his house. I think that was Muktiar Ganj. Am I correct? Osman Ganj, Muktiar Ganj, Maharaj Ganj. You know that area.
Yes.
And we were all sitting, the whole group of devotees were sitting on the ground. You know, that wasn't a day when we sat on tables, although later on, we sat on tables in 1976, December, with Prabhupada in Banjara Hills at the home of Bogilal Patel. You might not have heard the name of Bogilal Patel, but later on, Bogilal gave 100 acres of land in Ahmedabad, which today is 70 acres. Similar story to the Hyderabad land story. The son of Bogilal wanted to take all the land back, and he fought and he fought and he fought in the court. He sent gundas. And Bogilal was 4 years older than Prabhupada. And he had a big house in Banjara Hills, but he was an industrialist from Bombay. But I'm skipping ahead if I want to chronologically remember. But anyway, it's all remembrances of Prabhupada in Hyderabad. The topic is Prabhupada in South India. I was with Prabhupada in Chennai on January 1st and 2nd, 1976. And I was with Prabhupada in Nellore, which was January 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1976. Prabhupada in Tirupati was towards the end of April, 1974, 3 days. We drove from Hyderabad to Tirupati in a Matador, 16-passenger vehicle. There were 4 sannyasis and 4 or 5 brahmacharis. And I remember stopping for idlis on the roadside. We had no air conditioning and it was really hot in April. And an idli was 10 paisa. 10 paisa for an idli. How much is it now? Don't tell me. Anyway, the prasad that they brought for Prabhupada in Tirupati is another thing I remember. I don't remember, I didn't finish the story about Badruka. I'm sorry, I get carried away with this remembrance and that remembrance. So at Badruka's house in Muktiarganj, we were all sitting on the ground. We're all sitting on the ground. We had nice prasad and Prabhupada got up and suddenly all the devotees started running towards Prabhupada's plate. And, I was a new devotee. I had only been a devotee in ISKCON by that time for like 14 months. And I was only in Chicago. I came to India 2 months earlier. Not even 2 months, because I came middle of February. Yeah, I guess it was 2 months. Now that I think about it, because I was in Juhu for 10 days, then took the train to Calcutta, then went to Mayapur. I guess it was a week or 10 days. Then we went to Vrindavan. Prabhupada was in all these places, Juhu, Mayapur, Vrindavan, back to Juhu, and then Hyderabad. So anyway, Prabhupada got up and all the devotees wanted to take his remnants, right? That's why I didn't know about that. So I was sitting and watching this and what's going on? I was thinking. I remember at Badruka's house, there was some Rajasthani Brahmin who conversed with Prabhupada in Sanskrit. I mean, it was a very brief conversation. It wasn't, very lengthy, but I observed Prabhupada could converse in Sanskrit. But, his mission was something else. His mission was not to revive spoken Sanskrit, which I'm more interested in. But his mission was to spread his movement all over the world in as little a time as possible. Now in 1974, Prabhupada was 77, 78 years of age. And, Prabhupada was a diabetic. I don't know, many of you don't know that. So at the end, because of the diabetes, Prabhupada's internal organs were, destroyed. And diabetes is pretty bad. Anyway, so that's as much as I remember from Hyderabad 74 visit. And now the Tirupati visit. I remember coming in front of Balaji with Prabhupada, and all of the darshan line was closed. They sent us, the Minister of Endowments was Raja Sagi Suryanarayan Raju from Vijayanagaram, and he personally came from Hyderabad to welcome Prabhupada. Prabhupada had become very, very famous in India because of his, foreign disciples, the dancing white elephants that he called us. And so Sagi Suryanarayan Raju, Hari Prasad Badruka, they accompanied Prabhupada to Tirupati. Sagi Suryanarayan Raju welcomed him. He was the endowments minister and the temple is under the endowments department. So, he had the highest honors extended to him. This thing is, forgotten, right? Was so many years ago, right? We're talking 47 years ago. It's a long time, almost half a century. Fantastic reception. So when we went in front of the deities, Prabhupada did a full Shashtanga Dandavat. So, this in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, the Dandavats are done at the Garuda Stamba or Dwaja Stamba. But in Gaudiya Vaishnavas all do Shashtanga Dandavats in front of the deities. And then he got up and he said, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, just like you hear on the tapes. You must have heard Prabhupada's tapes and Prabhupada saying, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So he said that, and then he said, Balaji means Balkrishna. That much I remember. And, we could have a darshan as long as we wanted. There was no crowd, no pushing, no get out of here. Now it's unheard of. Maybe some, if the prime minister comes or somebody very, president of India comes, maybe they do that. Otherwise, they don't extend that type of a welcome anymore. But the kind of prasad that they brought, Prabhupada stayed in the VIP. I think there's VVIP, right? There's VIP and VVIP guest house in Tirupati. And varieties of prasadam was mind-boggling. I mean, wow, so many things they brought, different rice preparations. It's hard to remember everything, it was 3 days, 47 years ago, 3 days. How much can you remember? And unlike Harishori Prabhu, most of us, he's the only one maybe who kept a daily diary of everything. We never wrote it down. If we had written it down, it would have been better documented, but we didn't. So after 3 days, Prabhupada left. He flew in and flew out, and he went on his international tour. As I recall, he went to Europe, but anyway, it can all be checked by the letters. The trail of Prabhupada, where he went, it can be seen in the letters because each letter says where his camp is, where he was at a particular time. Anyway, we didn't have Prabhupada back in Hyderabad till this was March 1975. March 1975. So this was just before the opening of Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. And at that time, Mari Channa Reddy, many of you may have heard his name. Many of you possibly never heard his name. Young people don't know he was the chief minister of Andhra after being governor of UP. He was governor of UP. He was a big political leader. And later on, he became chief minister. After Prabhupada's disappearance, I think, he became chief minister. He's no more. And Prabhupada wanted to invite him personally to inaugurate Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. So what happened was, Prabhupada visited Hyderabad and 150 devotees came from Mayapur in the train. At that time, it was a 2-day train. Took 2 days and 1 night or 2 nights. It was a very tedious journey from Calcutta to Hyderabad. Very slow. Anyway, 150 devotees came. And at that time, near the Metchel farm, there was a little train halt, not even a station, but they put a sign, Dabilpur. And Chenna Reddy came to inaugurate that. And I had arranged the train cars, the 2 bogies from Calcutta to Hyderabad and Hyderabad to Mathura for all these 150 devotees. So in order to do that, I made friends with the divisional commercial, what was he called? Divisional commercial manager of South Central Railway. At that time, it was Mr. Rajan, who later on became head of the railway board in Delhi. So Rajan came to the function, and the idea was Prabhupada would meet him, but Prabhupada was absorbed in Chenna Reddy. And somehow Chenna Reddy, as many politicians do, they want, they get angry and then they want to dominate. And he got angry with this Rajan. And I couldn't understand, I was too young. I was 20 years old. I couldn't understand what was the cause of his anger. Even till now, I still can't understand why he got angry with Rajan. But after the inauguration, during the inauguration, he got wild with Rajan for some reason. So his mood wasn't good, but he did come to the Mitchell farm. Badruka was there, and Badruka was an influential guy. And he brought Chenna Reddy, and Rajan also came. Prabhupada showed, Chenna Reddy that we're getting this farm donated by Badruka. So these things I remember from 1975. Another thing I remember in 1975, one of the very old ISKCON devotees who Prabhupada made a sannyasi, Devananda. I didn't know him personally, but because he joined, 1967? Excuse me. Sheminchendi. So Devananda had left ISKCON and had gone to Nepal, and he returned to being a hippie. And you might have heard of the hippies. Young people in the United States, Prabhupada said the hippies are our best customers. And this Devananda came to Prabhupada intoxicated. And at that time, Brahmananda was with Prabhupada. And he was a big, strong, Pelwan type of Malla. You say Malla. Malla is a Sanskrit word for wrestler. It's in the Bhagavatam. So I wasn't personally present, but I heard the story secondhand at that time, and I remember it. Brahmananda Maharaj, Prabhupada said, show Devananda Maharaj to the door. Prabhupada ejected him from the room because he was intoxicated and he wasn't, he wasn't able to talk properly. So I remember hearing this story. I think during that visit, G. Pulla Reddy, as you all know, donated the abbot's land and had his sweet shop opposite the temple, which still exists. At least it was there when I came to Hyderabad a year and a half back, October of 2019. That was my last visit, just for 3 days. And Pulla Reddy invited everyone to his house for lunch, all the devotees. Of course, they didn't cook house in the lunch. In his house. Must have been catered. And we all went, and he had a big mansion, and we all sat in the grass, as I recall, and took the prasad. 150 devotees. There was Nagar Sankirtan in the Abbott's area with 150 devotees, all Westerners. You can imagine the impression. It created a big impression. There must have been a public program. Yeah, definitely, I'm sorry. Big public program at the Reddy Hostel. So I remember that. So at the Reddy Hostel, 10,000 people were coming. These were the days before TV. The TV in India in 1975 was Chennai, Madras, Bombay, Delhi, and Calcutta. No other city had a TV broadcasts. And even those cities, there was one boring channel and nobody would watch anyway. Maybe a few people. 10,000 people were coming. Thousands of people came to the Reddy. Reddy Hostel, you might know, it's near Abbott's, walking distance. What I remember from that, those lectures are recorded. I guess you can find them in the Prabhupada's Conversations and Lectures book. That's also available online now. But I remember particularly there was a question and answer session after the lectures. And one fellow got up and started talking, not asking a question actually, but he just started saying that Krishna came in my house and Krishna helped my mother and Krishna this and Krishna that. So Prabhupada said, if Krishna has come, then why is your family connected? Why are you talking about your family? So that was an interesting thing, because Prabhupada's point was that when you become free from all the material attachments, only you can see Krishna. Anybody can then claim it's very cheap that, Krishna came in my house, and he didn't accept it. Prabhupada didn't accept it. No. Why is your family involved? He said like that. I can't remember the exact words, but it's a paraphrase. He chastised that fellow. Boy, I'm just trying to think. How much time do I have, Prabhu? How much time do you want me to go on? Because I have more. No, not
5 more minutes.
Acha, that's not a lot of time, but it's okay. I'll go to 1976 and the opening of the temple, Janmashtami, 1976. Actually, I flew with Prabhupada. There were 5 of us in the flight. Hari Shauri Prabhu was Prabhupada's servant. Hari Kesh was a Swami at the time. He was Prabhupada's secretary. And another brahmachari I think he expired. I don't know exactly. We're not in touch. Riksharaj and myself. So, Prabhupada and Hari Shauri, there was 2 seats on one side and 3 seats on another. This was a French jet called the Caravelle. And it's a 1-hour flight. Prabhupada didn't say anything during the flight, nothing. Once he did go to the bathroom, that's all. It was all economy. There was no first class. This is another remembrance which I forgot from 74 and 75, and it applied in 76. We used to send a postcard to the life members. Prabhupada is coming. A postcard was 5 paisa or something. And there was a tremendous turnout of life members, and everybody brought a garland, and Prabhupada would get buried in garlands. They would take off the garlands, and then again he would be buried with garlands. So this happened. The special feature of the 76 August arrival for the Janmashtami and the temple inauguration was Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya, who was the Mukhya Purohit for performing the rituals to install the deities and inaugurate the temple, met Prabhupada at the ladder coming down from the plane. Actually, we waited for everyone to get off, and then Prabhupada, this airplane had a ladder at the end of the plane, which you don't see anymore. Instead of on the side, it was at the end. And Sampat Kumar was there with the Purna Kumbha and Veda Mantra Swagatam for Prabhupada. I remember that clearly. And all the life members were there with the garlands. So Prabhupada, this time, here's another thing I remember. Prabhupada used to stay in the house of Pannalal Pitti, who was a richer businessman than Badruka. And Pitti had a big car. He used to send big old, American car, Chevrolet or whatever, to pick up Prabhupada from the airport and take him around. And but this time, when the temple was inaugurated, there's a room in the temple that was made for Prabhupada, 2 rooms. One was the personal bedroom and one was a meeting room. So Prabhupada stayed there. Boy, it's 5 minutes is almost over. There is more about the opening. Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhuji, we would like to hear more and more. So we can continue till 7:30. It's 7:12 only. You can tell us.
Acha. Okay. So, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of, there's a picture of Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasa and the chief minister addressing the gathering, which I used on a poster to advertise this on Facebook and WhatsApp. And I mean, I don't know, quite a few people are watching. And I'm seeing my Facebook feed. And I don't know if you shared that poster. I made it at the last minute. And it's probably the first poster I ever made myself. And I had to redo it a couple times because certain information was missing and I had no practice at this. But Chief Minister was J. Vengal Rao. This is 45, 46, what is it? 1976. It's 47 years ago. 46 years ago, sorry. What is it? 45 years ago. 45 years ago. Long time. Long time. Only old timers can remember all these things. Probably over there, Anandamaya is the only person who was personally present. I don't know if anyone else was present for the opening. I know we had a lot of ISKCON leaders, Jasomati Nandan Prabhu, who's passed away, Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who was before he took sannyas, Jayapataka Maharaj, Gargamuni, then Swami, who lives in Vrindavan today, Yashodanandan Swami, then Swami, he's no longer a Swami, and he's no longer in ISKCON. Quite a few other devotees were there. Bhakti Vinod Prabhu, who wasn't initiated at that time, he got initiated later on by Gopal Krishna Maharaj, but he's president of Chandigarh temple, but he's from Chennai, and he was there at the opening. And Sampat Kumar, Prabhupada was very, very pleased with Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya and his group of Purohits from Bangalore who performed, well, what is it? Shilanyas, and I myself haven't memorized all of the rituals for installing the deities. Shayanadivas, Shilanyas, not Shilanyas, Shayanadivas, and Pran Pratishta and all those things. They did an excellent job. Prabhupada was very happy. There's pictures of them with Prabhupada. There's pictures of us sitting with Prabhupada. I remember, all right, quite a few devotees are in the picture. Anyway, I think Rajashekar Prabhu has documented all this. And because this program is in connection with his book, which I don't know, is it already published now? Is it, it's out, printed? And so that will be a good testament to to all of these activity, because Prabhupada in South India, he went to Chennai twice, but he stayed a very few days. Bangalore, he didn't go as a sannyasi. I don't know if he went as a householder. I don't think so. As a householder, he was in Bombay and Ahmedabad, that I know. But South India, I don't think. Only after taking sannyas and starting ISKCON, and then because this land was offered by Pula Reddy, Prabhupada kept coming back and again to Hyderabad. There was no land offered in Chennai ever, or in Bangalore. So Prabhupada had an invitation to go to Bangalore and to Kodai Canal. There was a Bengali doctor who had married a Parsi lady and who was 30, 40 years younger than he was, an elderly man, Prabhupada's age, Dr. Ghosh. He met Prabhupada at this time and he invited him to Kodai Canal, and Prabhupada said, yes, I'll come, but he never went. Boy, What other things? There was a girl who was painted a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And her father was a big government officer. So he brought his daughter and showed the picture to Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't like the picture. He said that, I have to be honest. This picture doesn't look like my Guru Maharaj, something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but he was critical. And, there was some embarrassment because this guy was a big government officer. You didn't want to disappoint him. We always want to be friendly with the government officers. There was a program, and I think I can't remember if it was this trip or the earlier trip of Prabhupada, or there was another end of December 76, but I don't think it was at that time, when 6 government ministers, it was organized by Badruka or Pulareddy or whatever, and 6 ministers attended Prabhupada's personal, private lecture. And Prabhupada addressed them, and I remember him saying, Balaji's money should be used for Balaji. The money, Tirupati is the richest temple in the world. And no doubt they make big crowns, and they have some minor money set aside for printing books. But they're not preaching Krishna Bhakti. So that was his criticism. That was Prabhupada's criticism. So I remember that. So Prabhupada was in his room at the night of the inauguration on Janmashtami, and he was showering. There was a door open to the temple. I think it's still there. And Prabhupada was throwing rose petals on everyone from the door. And I happened to walk by, and he called me over and asked me to pick him up. So that was the only time I touched Prabhupada. I didn't massage Prabhupada like Hari Shori Prabhu or Jasomati Nandan Prabhu. Some people massage he didn't appreciate. That's the story, but he definitely appreciated. Jasomati Nandan Prabhu massaged Prabhupada many times. Here's a story. It's not from Hyderabad, but since Jasomati Nandan Prabhu is no more, I'll take this opportunity to share with you an interesting story. He was massaging Prabhupada in Vrindavan, and there was some music playing. And Prabhupada asked him, what is this? Who is the singer? And Jasomati Nandan said, Prabhupada, that's Muhammad Rafi, very famous, cinema playback singer from the 1960s and 70s. Prabhupada said, oh, he's very sweet. That was a funny story. So anyway, I had this opportunity to pick up Prabhupada. I thought, it was a great blessing for me. And, that was the Hyderabad temple opening. Thousands of people came. It was a grand function. And, those were the days of the emergency. I don't know how many of you, I see these young people. I see their pictures. I don't know if they heard about Indira Gandhi's. It went on for a year and a half, more than a year and a half. She put all the opposition politicians in jail. It doesn't happen in many places. I guess where there's a dictatorship, it happens. All the political opposition she put in jail in the name of, there's an emergency. So we were very worried that the chief minister wouldn't come to the opening. And as it was, we had a life member who had been India's ambassador to Somalia. Muttial Rao, I remember his name. Anandamaya knows better. So Muttial Rao spoke to the chief minister, and the chief minister came. Otherwise, the chief minister was canceling because of the emergency. They were all afraid, the prime minister will get angry if we go to this function. And Muttial Rao told him, no, there's nothing to worry about. And it really added a lot of, importance to the opening when the chief minister came. So I guess I'm getting close to the end of my time. Prabhu, do you want to throw it open for questions from the audience?
Sure, Guru. So,
I mean, since there's just 5 minutes, 7 minutes left, if anybody has a question. Actually, I didn't finish the 1976 December visit of Prabhupada. I did mention that we sat at the table at Bogilal's house in Banjara Hills. I'll just tell one more thing about that. So we're all sitting at the table with Prabhupada, and there's a Bogilal was a Gujarati, and there's a sweet famous in Gujarat, Srikhand. Srikhand is dahi that's hung in a bag for a day or two, and all the water goes out, and then they mix it with sugar and fruit, pomegranate, dadam, what do you call it? Anar in Hindi. And while we were taking prasad, I don't know, Harishori Prabhu was present at that time. I don't remember. He might have been. But Prabhupada kept asking for more, right? He was quite elderly, and he kept eating the Srikhand. More Srikhand. I remember we were eating in steel plates, which was, for us, it was rare. We used to eat on the leaf plates. They were very cheap in those days. Now, leaf plate is very expensive. There was another, what else happened with Bogilal? Bogilal and another elderly man came to meet Prabhupada in Hyderabad temple in the December 76 meeting. And I was with them, just the four of us. And Prabhupada told them, he was speaking in English. He said, everything is failing, my stomach, my liver, and my kidneys. So when I heard him tell these men were, Bogilal was 4 years older. When I heard him talking like that, I was, worried internally. And that was I did see Prabhupada in Bombay after that briefly, and then in December. And we went with Prabhupada to Wardha, which is not Hyderabad. You can say South India because it's south of the Narmada. Narmada River might be the divider between North and South India, or the Godavari River. You can take your pick, which is North and South. So I have some memories because I spoke to Prabhupada at Wardha on the morning walk, which it was Gandhi ashram, Mahatma Gandhi's ashram. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, Mahatma Gandhi. And immediately he cut me off. He said, don't criticize Gandhi here. This is his place. They will not understand. And, I didn't actually criticize Gandhi, but I was about to ask him a question about Gandhi. But Prabhupada was very stern. Don't criticize Gandhi here. Oh, I'm sure there are other things, but the time is up. Is there any question from anyone? Doesn't look like I'm not getting any questions from Facebook either. Although, wow, I have to go. I don't know. I guess you can go. People are watching. No one has asked.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
Yeah.
I want to ask some question.
Yes, please.
Just to now, those who have attended during 1976, who are all alive now? Just do you remember any people in Hyderabad still?
Because I'm not staying in Hyderabad. Anandamaya is a better person to ask that question. Because I'm not staying in Hyderabad. I haven't stayed since 1979. So I'm not sure, but Badruka, I came to Hyderabad over the past in 2008. Noise is coming. 2018 and 2019, I came 3 times to Hyderabad, and I met Hari Prasad Badruka twice during those 3 times. I think the last time I came, I didn't meet him, as I recall. Can't remember exactly. But he was the only one that I had any touch with in the last few years. Other people I know passed away. The contractor who built the temple. Then there was a doctor, Nilakanta Das. He was initiated by Prabhupada, who was from, I think he was from West Godavari district, Raju. He was a Raju. He also expired, his wife. then I didn't keep in touch with the life members that I enrolled. I enrolled lots of life members, but didn't keep in touch with them. Tell you the frank truth. So there is something in the chat. There
Hare
is,
Krishna, Prabhuji.
yeah. I see here.
Dandavat
There's,
Pranam.
yeah, one second. Somebody in the chat window asked, do you remember anything about Srila Prabhupada giving initiation in Hyderabad? Who are those who took initiation? No, actually, I don't think during his visits he gave initiations. Even my initiation was by post, second initiation in Radhastami 74. It was by post. I don't remember him conducting an initiation ceremony. And what was my age when you were with Prabhupada? I mentioned that I was, in 74, I was 19. So 75, I was 20, 76, 21.
It's 9 o'clock.
Like that. Yeah, when Prabhupada passed away, I was... somehow I got muted. Looks like I'm in Jagannath Puri for those of you on, what is this? Zoom. But I'm not in Jagannath Puri. Those on Facebook can see that I'm sitting in a room here in Dallas, Texas, in the USA. Yeah, sorry, I cut someone off. Please speak now, because that was the end of the questions from the chat box, chat window. Who was it who wanted to ask a question? Nobody? Maybe I answered. You muted everyone, maybe, Prabhu.
Yes, Anup Prabhu is going to ask question.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I am very glad and excited to hear about Prabhupada from your mouth. It's very enlightening and very inspiring. I wanted to know that, so you have, at the age of 20, you have taken such intelligent connections and contacts and arranged trains and all. So how you got so inspired that in just age of 20 you have
Oh, it was a service given to me by the temple president, Mahamsa. If you've heard his name, Maha-Angsha, but we called him Mahamsa Swami. And he asked me to do that job. I was a humble servant, in the temple. So I went to I just got an appointment with the divisional commercial manager of the South Central Railway. And we gave an application, and he facilitated those 2 cars from Calcutta to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Mathura, for all the 150 devotees that came from Mayapur. I had to do my job.
That was really adventurous and responsible. Very thank you.
It was given to me. It was a task assigned to me by the president at the time, temple president. It's all history now. I see here, there's a question on Facebook, but here I saw in a poster, Prabhupada gave sannyas to one Prabhu, but his sannyas, Satsvarup Goswami, that is in the temple opening? No. There are pictures of Prabhupada giving sannyas, but not in Hyderabad, no. In Hyderabad, he never gave any initiation or sannyas. At least between 74 and 77. Before 74, Anandamaya Prabhu can answer that question. Okay, Prabhu, I can wind it up then.
Hare Krishna, this is Hari Sori Das.
Have a happy Gopurnima, Vasu Ghosh Prabhu.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you. It looks like you're in South India.
No, it looks like that's Jagannath. The Jagannath temple. There's a facility here in Zoom to have a backdrop. So if you're on Zoom, you see Jagannath Puri, but I'm also broadcasting this on Facebook. There are other programs where you can multi-stream on several platforms, and I haven't figured that. I did it once, but I have to, you know.
How do we change the background?
You go in a stop where it says on the bottom lower corner of your screen, it says stop video, and there's a little arrow. You click on that arrow, and then it says choose virtual background. You got that?
Yeah, got it.
So when you choose virtual background, I have this picture on my computer of the Jagannath temple. So I chose that, and it's stuck there. So when you see me, I'm Jagannath Puri. And it's nice, you know, people see it and they think of Jagannath and the chakra and the flag.
All right, well, my computer is saying that it's not the right kind to be able to run.
Yeah, you need a new computer maybe. I have a supercomputer. Prabhu, I don't want to reveal to everyone, but I call it a supercomputer. It's called a MacBook Pro. You've heard of it.
Well, I've got a MacBook Air.
Oh, I see.
Anyway,
well,
it's going, so I'm going back to my own home.
Anyway, I'm eager to hear your remembrances, so I'm going to stick around, but I have to leave in about an hour for another program that's about a half an hour's drive from here. There's a Abhishek of Gornitai and maybe you remember Shamik Rishi Prabhu.
I do. I know him very well.
This is his son-in-law is an oncologist, a cancer specialist here in Dallas. So he's initiated by Radhanath Swami. So there's an Abhishek and lecture at his house this morning. It's 9 in the morning here in the central daylight savings time. We just shifted on the 14th, our clock's an hour ahead. We lost an hour, but we get more daylight.
All right, well, it's 7:30 here. I was told that my session was going to begin at 8, but obviously whoever gave me the information didn't make the adjustment for the time change.
7:30 in India now? No, 8. It should be 7:30 in the evening.
Yes.
The program was what, 6 to 8?
I think I'm
6:30 to 8:30.
6:30 to 8:30.
Yes.
So 1 hour is gone. You have 1 more hour. They started late, Prabhu. It started like 15 minutes late. You know, IST.
I should begin.
Indian stretchable time. Yeah, please.
All right. So thank you all for asking me to speak a few words. Prabhupada in South India, like Vasu Ghosh Prabhu. I'm not really clear about where the border is between North India and South India, but I presume that Hyderabad and Tirupati and Nellore, I presume they're all classified as South India. Even if they aren't, that's what I'm going to speak on. So,
Prabhuji, if you give us chance, I'll just introduce you. There's some music. I'll just take a minute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's very, very clear.
All right.
So, I would like to thank His Grace Vasu Ghosh Prabhu, and also would like to invite His Grace Harishori Prabhu. A short introduction. His Grace Harishori Prabhu was born in England in November 17, 1950. In May 1971, he immigrated to Australia, where on the second day of his arrival, he met the members of newly emerging Krishna consciousness movement. He was duly accepted as an initiated disciple by His Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada on April 9, 1972 in Sydney. In August 1975, he moved to a newly opened ISKCON Krishna Balram temple in Vrindavan, UP, where he served as temple commander. In November of the same year, he joined A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada's personal entourage remaining at His Divine Grace servant for 16 months. In March of 1977, Srila Prabhupada appointed His Grace Hari Prabhu as ISKCON's governing body commissioner for Australia, New Zealand, and Indonesia. A service he performed for over 7 years. During that period, he oversaw the growth of the ISKCON society in the South Seas from 4 temples and ashrams to 17, including 4 farming communities, 2 schools, and several restaurants. He was also instrumental in establishing branches of Bhaktivedanta Book Trust in Australia and Indonesia. In 1986, he began the work of transforming the diary he kept while traveling with Srila Prabhupada into a book, or rather a series of books. In 1990, he moved to America and worked as publisher for Back to Godhead magazine, the Krishna Consciousness Movement Spiritual Periodical, for a year. He lives in ISKCON World Headquarters in Mayapur, West Bengal, in India, near Kolkata, with his wife and daughter, where he continues to publish his memories of being with Srila Prabhupada. He is currently the director of Bhaktivedanta Research Center in Kolkata, an academic resource of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and an archive library of Asian Vaishnava text. So we are very, very grateful to His Grace Hari Prabhu for giving his valuable time. Let us welcome him by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama
Rama, Hare Hare. Jai. Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So thank you all for inviting me to speak a few words. Actually, I think my wife was approached first, but she was feeling ill. So I'm doing it in her stead. So you want to know a little bit about Srila Prabhupada in South India. I went there with Prabhupada about 4 or 5 times. In January 1976, first day of January, I'd been with Prabhupada about 1 month as his personal servant. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, on the first day of the year, flew into Bombay to be Prabhupada's visiting GBC secretary for 1 month. As soon as he arrived, we left Bombay and flew down to Madras, now Chennai, of course. Let me see. We did 2 programs at the, there's a large marriage hall there, and I just forget the name of it. I'm sure Vasu Ghosh will remember it.
Rajeshwari Kalyan Mantapam.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Rajeshwari Kalyana Mantapam.
So Prabhupada did 2 programs, 2 nights, Jan 1st and January the 2nd. And then we were due to travel to Nellore the next day. So that Nellore episode is quite interesting. Whilst we were in Madras, we were staying at the house of a life member. And in chatting with him, Prabhupada was informed, one of the things that I remember was that Prabhupada was informed that there was a deity in Madras of Krishna, and he had a mustache. So they asked Prabhupada if that's bona fide. So Prabhupada said no, Krishna doesn't have a mustache, but Arjuna and his brothers do. So that's a Kshatriya thing. So anyway, we traveled up from the railway station in Madras to Nellore. It was about a 3-hour trip. When we went to the station, we sat for a few minutes in Prabhupada's car, whilst the devotees booked a cabin for Prabhupada, a first-class cabin, and they had put nice white, new white sheets over all the seats, etc., so that Prabhupada would be in a more Suchi environment. And that was it. When we set off, after some time, Prabhupada asked for his breakfast. So we had a 3-tier cooker. I'm sure everybody's seen the famous cooker. And also a tiffin box. So we gave Prabhupada his breakfast. We means myself, Tamal Krishna Goswami, and Hare Krishna Prabhu at that time. He was cooking for Prabhupada. So the 4 of us were sitting in the cabin. We finished eating, and then one by one we went out through the sliding door to the end of the carriage so that we could wash our mouth and hands, etc. So when Tamal Krishna Maharaj got up to go out into the corridor and down to the toilet bathroom, he somehow or another, he only half opened the door and slid through the gap and then immediately shut the door again. And when he came back in after 5 minutes brush up, he did exactly the same thing. He opened the door, slid it open about 1 feet, 2 feet, and then quickly shut it behind him. So myself and Hare Krishna were a bit surprised, what's he up to? So he told us that there's 3 men out here. They got on the train in Madras and they've been hanging around the door, hoping to see Srila Prabhupada. So we had a short discussion about the values or not of allowing these gentlemen in. On the one hand, they were respectful. They recognized Prabhupada was a sadhu. And at that time, ISKCON was just starting to get a bit of a good name for itself. So they were very curious. But of course, they were karmis, not devotees, and they had some idea in mind to get some benefit from seeing a saintly person. So I went out, closed the door, 5 minutes wash, and came back. I half opened the door again. And this time, the 3 men were standing behind, craning their necks, trying to catch Prabhupada's attention, because they knew that once you've seen somebody, you have to recognize them. If you can get away with not seeing anybody, then they can't enter your space. But these 3 gentlemen, they knew if they caught Prabhupada's eye, then his secretaries would be obliged to let them in. So that happened. As soon as I opened the door, they strained in behind me. So Prabhupada said, all right, come in. So before they come in, and we discussed about the merits of letting them in or not, Prabhupada told us, he said, this is what they call Ashirvav Bhavas. Ashirvav means, of course, blessings. So these people, they're karmis, they want to come and get some material blessing. So in that way, then we got a little bit primed up. Anyway, so when I came back in, they caught Prabhupada's eye, so Prabhupada said, let them in. So we 3, Tamal, Hare Krishna, and myself, sat on one side. We allowed the 3 men to occupy the opposite seats. And Prabhupada smiled. He asked the cursory questions, what's your names, where are you from, what work do you do, etc. And then Prabhupada looked at them directly and he said, so, what can I do for you? So immediately one of the men said, oh, Swamiji, we just want to get your blessings. As soon as he said blessings, then Prabhupada said, what is that blessing? So they were a bit rattled by that. Nobody had apparently asked them what they wanted to get blessings for. So it's just like a cursory thing, obligatory. So as soon as Prabhupada said that what are those blessings? Then the leader of the little group, he immediately started to stammer a little bit. And he said, well, Swamiji, he said, I have this bad knee. And as soon as he said that, we just kind of gave out, here we go. So he realized that he said the wrong thing. So he said, oh, and of course we want peace and happiness for our families. We again, responded with a resigned, wheeze. And then finally the man kind of ended his request for blessings by saying, and of course we want there to be peace in the world. So he was very embarrassed because he could see that Prabhupada and his servants were not going along with it. We weren't enthusiastic about his so-called blessings. So Prabhupada, without batting an eyelid, he pointed to the three of us with our shaved heads, dhoti, tilak, japamala, kuntimala, etc. And Prabhupada said, this is my blessing. Are you prepared to accept such a blessing? These boys have given their whole lives for the service of Krishna. So are you prepared to give up your whole life? And as soon as Prabhupada said that, they immediately panicked, like a mild panic. And they said, oh, Swamiji, we're a family men. We have still to look after our children. We have work to do. So we can't, he didn't say exactly we can't accept the blessing, but that was clear that that's what was going through his mind. He was becoming terrified that if he accepted Prabhupada's blessing, then he was going to go be recruited and sent out doing the preaching work. Anyway, so it was quite funny. They immediately stood up. They said, well, thank you very much, Swamiji. It's been a pleasure to meet you. And out the door they went. So Prabhupada was laughing, we were laughing. But Prabhupada said, this is the problem. In India, especially, they take it that if I go to the saintly person when I'm ill or I require some treatment, then I can get some blessings and not have to pay any money for the treatment. So he said, this is not blessings. This is not what we're offering to people. Prabhupada was giving everybody the chance to join in with the Sankirtan movement. So after 3 hours, we got to Nellore. We were nicely met at the railway station. Mahamsa Swami was there, and I think possibly some Namhat, Guru Kripa Swami came just a day or two later, I think. And when we arrived, there was a little procession. Prabhupada was immediately taken by car to the house where we were to stay. So the reason for going to Nellore was that two sisters, I think they were called Katamanchi. One was a widow, one was unmarried. So ladies were about maybe 40 years old, something like that, 35 to 40 years old. And they had made an offer of some land to ISKCON. So there were two parcels of land. One was 7 acres and the other one was 2 acres. So it was quite an extensive patch of land there. And our car pulled up at the entranceway. There was a driveway that went in about 150 meters. At the end of the driveway, there was a circular turnaround spot, and that was the entry also to go into the house. So we got down on the roadside and walked in. And the reception was cordial. We thought maybe it's because they're not used to dealing with Western devotees or any devotees practically, that they were, kind of quiet, but it was a little bit unusual. It was almost like they weren't sure whether they wanted us to be there or not. So anyway, we were invited into the house. Prabhupada was given a room on the ground floor with a bathroom, and then there was a grilled-in veranda. So by the time that we settled in, it was time for Prabhupada's massage. So I was giving Prabhupada his massage, and then we heard this sound. Wah! chickens. So Prabhupada heard it and he looked at me, he said, what is that? I said, well, it's chickens, Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada immediately said, oh, when then that. So I was trying to be optimistic. I said, well, at least it means they must be eating eggs. I didn't want to say, you know, the 4-letter word, meat. But immediately Prabhupada told me, go and get Hare Krishna, because Hare Krishna had to cook for him. By this time, Hare Krishna had also made the discovery that they were meat eaters. So when he discussed it with Prabhupada, Prabhupada ordered him, don't cook in the kitchen where they're cooking meat. You get the utensils that you require and you find some other place to cook. So they did that. He did that. And Prabhupada didn't say anything to the sisters, but it was clear that there was something kind of unusual about the whole reception. Prabhupada was willing to give them the benefit of any doubts that might be there. So I do remember I went in and into the kitchen to get some salt for Srila Prabhupada's cooking and lunch and etc., his meals. So when I went in, I thought, well, I don't want to be doing this every day. The salt was in a big, like crystalline lump, and you had to smash the salt into powder. So I made enough, which I thought, and I put in a small pot. I thought that would be sufficient for the next few days, and therefore it wouldn't be a necessity for me to go in to a place where they were cooking meat. So I put that pot of salt on the chunky that Prabhupada was using for eating from. So once we got settled in, I think the next morning, Prabhupada was taking his breakfast. Yasamati Nandana Swami came in. Maybe Achutananda was there also. And they were chatting with Srila Prabhupada. Mahamsa was there, of course. And as Prabhupada was talking to them, he finished eating himself and washing up. He came in and sat down behind a low table. And as he was talking to the sannyasis, at the same time, he had one eye on them and he had his other eye on me. I was towards the back of the room. I cleaned the chonky, and the salt pot was there, and it was not covered. It was an open pot, and so I left that on the chunky, and Prabhupada immediately said, "Just see, Malacha." He said, "If it's been used once, then you have to dispose of it. It should be fresh every day." So that taught me a lesson, a good lesson, that Prabhupada liked pure sattvic food. And that was one of our Western habits. On the table, you always keep an open pot of salt and sometimes pepper. So Prabhupada was immediately, he saw it. There was nothing that you could do that Prabhupada didn't really know what was happening. So I got a bit of chastisement and I learned something from that little exchange. So in Nellore, in the evenings, there was some place in the center of town. So there was a big ashvat tree, banyan tree. There was like a concrete platform in front of it, big enough to stage a drama or have some speakers up on the stage, etc. And Prabhupada was very happy to see about 6,000 people were packed into the area around this stand. And he lectured from the 6th canto. He just received via Tamal Krishna Maharaj when he had flown in from America. He brought with him the first volume of the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada was very happy to receive that, because that's got the story of Ajamila in it, which was one of his favorite topics. And Prabhupada went up on the stage and he spoke from the 6th canto. We were also accompanied by one locally famous poet. Several other distinguished gentlemen were there, and they spoke a little bit, praising Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. And all told, it was a good success. On the way back from the pandal to the sister's house, Prabhupada, during his lecture, he had told us the story of one of Lord Chaitanya's associates who had broken some Smartakas rule. And when he approached the local brahmanas how to purify or rectify the fault, one of them told him, well, you should drink a liter of boiling lead. And he got a similar reaction from another brahmana, drink a liter of boiling ghee. So that was obviously not satisfactory. This, just forgetting the name of the devotee, but he went to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya said, good, now you can retire, go to Vrindavan. So he left immediately, his family and friends, and went straight to Vrindavan. So Prabhupada had told that story. And in the car back to the house, then he told us, if you can tell a story in the middle of giving a lecture, that's very good, because the audience can, easily understand what you're saying then. So we got back into the house. I think the next day, we, after breakfast, again, the sannyasis, this may have been actually in the night before. Anyway, some of the sannyasis, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, etc., came into Prabhupada's room. We had a short kirtan, and hearing the sound of the mridanga and the karatals, the two sisters came in and sat at the doorway. They didn't come all the way in. And we had like a 10-minute kirtan. Then Prabhupada started speaking on the Sri Ishopanishad. So as soon as he started speaking,
it's 8 o'clock.
These ladies immediately got up and went away. So they were attracted by the chanting, but they had no acumen for appreciating the philosophy. So it was an unusual situation. The women never smiled. The conversations that they had with Srila Prabhupada were very cursory, only lasted a couple of minutes. But still Prabhupada was optimistic that we could do something there. So I think the second or third day that we were there, he did the Cornerstone foundation stone ceremony. A big marble plaque was there, and Prabhupada came out for a program in the mid-morning. During the program, he got down from the stage, went over to the pit where the Anantashesha and all the auspicious items, 9 jewels, 9 leaves, I think, etc., were there. Prabhupada put them in the ground. He put a little cement on and a brick on top of that, and then he came out from the ground again and gave another short talk. So that was nice. There weren't very many people there, but things were going on. So as soon as we noticed that there was something unusual about this situation, Prabhupada's response was to ask for the deed of gift. So Mahamsa apologized because the deed of gift was in Bombay. So Prabhupada told him, immediately bring that deed of gift. Let's see what it says there. And then in the meantime, that took 3 or 4 days. So in the meantime, Prabhupada was giving regular pandal programs every evening. People were very enthusiastic. The devotees that were there on Mahamsa's team, and I think Basu Ghosh Prabhu was there also. They were going out during the daytime, doing Naga Sankirtan, and inviting people to come for the program. So there was a good response. Prabhupada was very hopeful about that. Then finally, on our second to last day of our stay there, then Gopal Krishna Prabhu, who was the new GBC more or less in India at that time, he finally got a hold of the deed of gift. And Prabhupada read through it. And then at the bottom, as they say, always read the fine print. So at the bottom of the deed of gift, there were some clauses. One of them was that ISKCON had 3 years to construct a temple with a kirtan hall, with a library, with an interreligious studies library, a meditation hall, and a temple. So Prabhupada read that. He said, well, we already do our meditation by chanting Hare Krishna. We don't need a library because we've got our own books. And so it was a bit suspicious what this was all about. And he knew that this was the formula that was used by the Ramakrishna mission. They build a temple, they build a meditation hall, etc. So it said in the fine print that if we don't complete the buildings by 3 years, then the sisters will have the right to take back the property and give it to someone else, such as the Ramakrishna Mission of Calcutta. So like this, there was 2 or 3 conditions that had to be followed. So Prabhupada immediately rejected it. He said, this is just a trick. He said, ISKCON is the only movement now in India, practically, that's building new temples. So these are 2 sisters, they live on their own. The Ramakrishna sannyasis, they have no principles. They have no such thing as no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, etc. So Prabhupada surmised that this was actually a trick to get ISKCON to come in with its money, start doing the buildings, and then somehow or another, before the 3 years were out, they could somehow, by some trick or other, at that time actually in India, cement was rationed. So to get cement, you had to get a special license. So maybe they could stop that license and stop the supply of cement. Then by conditions of the deed of gift, then we would be obliged to give the land and the whatever buildings they constructed back to the sisters. So on the morning that we left, Prabhupada called the sisters in. He thanked them very nicely, and he had me read out the section of the Bhagavad Gita about giving things in charity. So I read that, and then Prabhupada said, so in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that charity should be given in the mode of goodness. That means that there's no desire or motive behind it. It should simply be freely given. So Prabhupada preached to them that you try to follow this standard from the Bhagavad Gita. And then that was it. We drove back to the station. We went back to Madras. And Prabhupada told Mahamsa Swami, now you go and speak with these sisters and try to convince them that they should give the land without any attachment or conditions on the deed of gift. So he tried to do that over the next couple of months. Now this happened in January. By mid-January, we went up to Calcutta by train, I think. No, we flew over from Bombay, sorry. On January the 17th, Prabhupada came to Mayapur. Then a few weeks later, Mahamsa turned up and gave a report that the sisters would not change the conditions on the land there. So then Prabhupada wrote to Shravanananda and Bhavabhuti Prabhus, who were the co-temple presidents in Madras. He said, you approach them. If they won't give us a clear title, then you dig up the foundation stone and the Anantashesha, and you take them to Madras. We'll use it there for a building in Madras. So that was it. They refused. Prabhupada actually dug up the foundation stone, pretty revolutionary, and the Anantashesha, and took them with us. And one other thing about that trip, I mean, there are lots of things I'm skimming over, but one of the things was that we were due to fly from Madras back to Bombay, and they had booked the tickets, but unfortunately they booked the tickets for a Thursday. And Prabhupada immediately, when he saw that, he said, no, we can't travel on a Thursday. So I saw several times Prabhupada would not make a trip if it was on a Thursday. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he pointed out that there were certain obligations that Prabhupada had in Bombay. So it would be difficult if he waited for one day in Madras before he could get a plane. So they decided that as long as he didn't travel between from 4 p.m. to 7 or 7:30 p.m., he wouldn't travel. If there was a plane before that or after that, then he was willing to travel. So we ended up getting the last train back to, the last flight back to Bombay. From Bombay, so since we're talking about South India, I'll skip a bit of time here. That was the first time I had gone down to South India with Srila Prabhupada. And then the next time was in August of 1976. Prabhupada had been on his last world tour. He arrived back in Bombay on August the 13th, late evening, and he stayed there for a couple of days. So let's see now. The opening of the Hyderabad temple, that was to be conducted, I think, on the 17th and 18th of August on Janmashtami, and then, of course, Prabhupada's Viasa Puja was the next day. So we flew down for the opening. Prabhupada, or the devotees, had met with some South Indian Brahmanas, Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya and his men. Many of them were worshippers of Lord Nrsingadev. They very much appreciated Srila Prabhupada and Prabhupada's disciples. They could understand it's something very important going on when hordes of Westerners now are suddenly becoming Vaishnavas. So they really, really liked Srila Prabhupada. They were very nice gentlemen. And they had been hired to do the official installation of the deities. So they already had Radha, Madan and Mohan, 6 feet tall, and they were installing equally sized Gaurnitai. And then also on the third altar, they were having Lord Jagannath, quite a big sized Lord Jagannath, about 4 feet tall. Basu Ghosh Prabhu, you mentioned about this doorway in Prabhupada's room, which enabled him to look down into the temple. So the way the temple was constructed, they had Prabhupada's rooms were at the back side of the temple or adjoining the temple room, but it was like on a mezzanine level. So when we had first arrived in Hyderabad, then after some reception from the Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya's men at the airport, then Prabhupada was taken by car to the temple. The Jagya, I don't know what the technical name for it is, but the Jagya for inaugurating, the installation of an opening of the temple, and the puja that was done to the person who is, the key focal point on opening or building and opening the temple. Those pujas were done. It was about 10 o'clock at night by the time that they'd finished. As a matter of fact, I still have a couple of paraphernalia from Prabhupada from that Jagya when he first arrived. They chanted some mantras. They put a kusa grass ring on his finger, like a little aluminum bangle on his wrist, and some pavitras for around his neck. So those three things, at the end of the ceremony, I collected them from Srila Prabhupada. I put them in a bag, and I still have them here at my home. But anyway, instead of Prabhupada being taken into the temple to his quarters, he was instead taken to the house of Hare Krishna Badruka. And Mr. Badruka was on the verge of donating 560 acres of land in a place called Medchal, like an hour or so from Hyderabad. So we had to drive quite a distance to get to Mr. Badruka's house. And then, of course, when you're visiting somebody, you have to spend some time talking, etc. So by the time that Prabhupada went to bed or was ready for bed, it was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. Still, Prabhupada stayed up all night, did his translation work. He was very regular with that. And then in the morning, about 4 or 5 o'clock, Prabhupada rang the bell. So I went in to see what he wanted. He said, now pack up everything. We're going to move into the temple. It's not good that we should stay in somebody else's house, whilst this building is going on. Actually, I think one of the real reasons was that Prabhupada knew that Mahamsa Swami, although was a very nice person individually, Prabhupada told me that he doesn't speak badly against anybody and nobody speaks badly against him. But he was not a good manager. So Prabhupada decided to move into the temple building as they were getting ready for the installations and jagyas and the opening. So when we came to his room, it was filthy. It was covered in cement dust, and this doorway was there on the side. When you opened the door, then you were actually looking directly down into the temple. It was kind of protruded. There was a little veranda, not very big, about 1 feet, that protruded out. The idea was that Prabhupada, instead of coming up and down the stairs to give darshan, he could simply come out through this door and sit on this small veranda, and he would be inside the temple, and people could get his darshan from the temple room floor. So the only problem was that they hadn't fitted the door. There was no frame, what to speak about a door. And so they'd hung this thick velvet cloth across the doorway. So when Prabhupada sat down, after a few minutes, he called me in. He said, "Who has made this?" And he was indicating these, these bolsters filled with cotton. So he thumped one of them. He said, "These bolsters are as hard as rocks." So he wasn't very impressed with some of the arrangements. There was hardly any water in the bathroom. We had to collect it up so that Prabhupada could take his bath. But still, Prabhupada, he maintained a kind of serene attitude towards it, but he saw everything that was going on. Mahamsa and Yasodhanandan Swami, they came into his room, or Prabhupada called them into his room, and they'd been growing out their beards and hair for observing the Chaturmasya. So Prabhupada told them off. He said, the chief minister's coming. It's not good that you walk around looking so scruffy. He said, go and shave. So he had them shave their heads and beards off so that their appearance would be more acceptable. So in the evening, I gave Prabhupada his massage maybe about 11 o'clock at night. And as I was massaging him, we heard this kirtan, and it was getting louder and louder. So I went to the curtain that was covering this doorway and looked down into the temple room. There was a group of men, our men, having an ecstatic kirtan, jumping up and down and chanting loudly the Hare Krishna mantra. And they were accompanied by the South Indian Brahmanas, about 5 or 6 of them. And through the doorway, I saw Lord Jagannath come walking in. So you've seen in Jagannath Puri how they move the deity. They roll him to one side, to the other side, and gradually they move forward. And it's like this dance going on between the pujaris and Lord Jagannath. So these pujaris were doing the same thing with our Lord Jagannath. They kind of rock and rolled him over through the entrance, across the floor, and then they were picked up and brought inside the deity room. So when they got to the last, I think Balaram, Subhadra, and then Lord Jagannath went on last, they didn't immediately put him up in the deity room, but they started, each successive kirtan after each deity was getting more and more ecstatic. So with the final deity to be put in, then our men really let loose. Yasodhanandan Swami was noted for his ability to do kirtan. Guru Kripa also. I don't think he was there, but Yasodhanandan was there. And they had what we call a Wampa Stompa kirtan, these jajas, these big kartals. And our men were getting so ecstatic, they were jumping up and down in the air. So the South Indian Brahmanas, they lost all of their sobriety, and they started jumping up and down in the air and putting their hands up, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, and they were joining in, with our very youthful Western devotees. So they were really going for it. And then at one point I saw there was a fellow with a big beard, and apparently I found out later on it was a pujari of Lord Nrsingadev. So he was dancing and jumping up and down, and all of a sudden he stopped still. And then he started to open his mouth out like a lion. And his hands were stretched out like this. And he put them into the shape of a claw. So he got so ecstatic that he got into this Nrsingadev bhava. And he was just standing there growling and, shaking his hands like they were cat's paws. And then all of a sudden, bang, he fell over on the floor and he appeared to be unconscious. Then his compatriots, they came rushing up. They lifted up his head, tapped him on the cheek a little bit, brought him out of his so-called bhava. And then immediately he stood up and started chanting and dancing again with the devotees. So it was a very, very far out, very unusual. It was my first experience of seeing somebody actually in so-called ecstasy. Anyway, it was a very interesting event. So that was it. They got the deities in the night. The next day was Janmashtami. The chief minister of the state, and I forget his name now, I've got it written down somewhere, he attended along with Muchal Rao. He had been the ambassador to Somalia for some time anyway, a couple of years. So he was a great admirer of Srila Prabhupada, although he himself was a drunkard and he ate meat, but he really, really liked Srila Prabhupada. And at one point, actually, just before we left, he asked Prabhupada if he could get initiated. So Prabhupada very carefully, kind of deftly explained that, well, we do have these standards that we have to live up to get initiation. And he admitted he was an honest man in that respect, if politicians can be honest. He admitted that he wasn't able to follow the principles. So Prabhupada said, so you associate with our men, gradually you'll become purified, and then you can be initiated. So he was happy with that. And we did do actually a program at his house. Prabhupada did a program. He did a press conference at the house also. So he was very, very, he was very, very happy to be associated with ISKCON. At the press conference, he told all the pressmen, Prabhupada is his guru. He fully supports everything that he does, etc., etc. So it's very, very, very nice. Now, one person that was coming was Sagi Surya Narayan Raju. He was the Minister for Endowments for Andhra Pradesh. So sometime previously, the government, seeing all the money that was being given to Balaji, they nationalized all the temples in Andhra Pradesh so that they could get at the funds that was reported to be there in the Balaji temple. So this man, he was the Minister of Endowments. So he had been appointed to the cabinet to handle the money that came from Balaji. And he was a very nice man, very small, as I recall. He had a big white handlebar mustache, but very pious kind of person. So he came to see Prabhupada several times to ask what was the best way to use the money that was coming from Balaji. And Prabhupada immediately told him that not one penny, not one paisa should be used for anything other than the service of Lord Balaji. These people are bringing their offerings. Now, there was a rumor that the government were taking the money or giving themselves loans from Balaji's Dakshina and spending it on developing industrial enterprises. And that was the real reason why they had occupied all the temples, was so that they could get at Balaji's money. So Prabhupada was very strict about it, and he told them you can't spend anything except on the Balaji. So if you do you can do programs like we are doing. You go and you do chanting, prasadam distribution, gradually people will become purified. So you can use that money for that purpose. They had already instituted some program where all the brahmanas in the different villages, they were given a stipend from the government so that they could do or spend time doing their temple activities properly and not have to bother too much about survival and work. And they had some program for educating the boys, young men, in chanting Sanskrit slokas, etc., etc. So Prabhupada said, none of this actually will do you any good. You have to make your offerings to Balaji, distribute the prasadam that comes from that, and travel through the state, through all the temples, and bring up the standards to the standard that we have. So he was advising that you just come here regularly to our temple, you see how our men are practicing Krishna consciousness, and then you introduce that same program all over Andhra Pradesh. So Prabhupada was very happy with Mr. Raju. He had come to see him several times, and he did something exceptional. He invited 6 or 7 cabinet ministers to come to his own home, and he had Prabhupada come, and he lectured to them for about half an hour. As I remember, he used the word Shastra and its different meanings, and he explained something about the Varnashram system. It's not fresh in my brain right now, but that was the general gist of it. So all these cabinet ministers, they all sat very attentively, very polite. Some of them were a little actually excited about Prabhupada visiting there. So Prabhupada was quite happy with that. Later on, a couple of months later, when we were staying in Vrindavan, one of those cabinet ministers actually came there to Srila Prabhupada to discuss various items with him. So anyway, the installation then of the deities in Hyderabad, very memorable. And next day was Prabhupada's Viasa Puja, 18th of August, I think it was, in 1976. So Prabhupada, again, if you look at the pictures, there's a nice white marble Viasa, but the top half is missing. It's just the base of it. So Prabhupada sat on that. And then Motil Rao came, a couple of other ministers came, and Prabhupada had, a few days before, received his Vyasa Puja book. All the temples, they would write an offering, and it was printed in this book. So what Prabhupada did was he had Harikesh stand up at the microphone and then just read out the names of every temple that was in that book, because he wanted to impress on people how Krishna consciousness movement was a worldwide movement. So this was the evidence, the Vyasa Puja book. And then, of course, they washed Prabhupada's feet. We had Arati, and then Prabhupada retired to his rooms. Unfortunately, because of various health problems, especially he had no digestion, he contracted a little dysentery whilst we were there in Hyderabad and skipped several meals. And at that time, actually, from looking back now, from about September onwards, Prabhupada really started to, his health started to go down. He was losing a little weight, getting more and more frail, just 10 years of intensive preaching, traveling all over the world 14 times, preaching to different people day in and day out. It really took its toll on him. Just recently, I read a conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Bhagatji. Bhagatji was Vishvambar Dayal. He lived just around the corner from the Krishna Balaram Mandir, and he every day came in to try to help with the development of the Krishna Balaram temple, and he cooked rotis for Srila Prabhupada, and he was generally an all-round good person. He donated a lakh of rupees for the Gurukul in Vrindavan, so Prabhupada liked him a lot. And now, what was I going to say? Now I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, let's see. I'm sorry, I've lost my track here now. Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja anyway was very successful. There was one thing that I didn't mention, was that when Prabhupada first moved into his rooms and he saw they were only half complete, they were dirty, the cushions were not even made properly, Prabhupada told me, he said, actually, because the excuse was that they had to put all their energy and time into readying the altars for the deities, and that was why Prabhupada's room was not completed yet. Prabhupada told me that actually, he said, the place of the spiritual master should be done before the placement of the deities. He said it's more important to worship the spiritual master than it is to worship the deities. So he was not very happy about their neglect. Now, one thing that happened at the end of the visit, after 2 or 3 days after the installation, Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya and his men left to go back to their respective homes. So Sampat gave a Shalagram Shila to Srila Prabhupada. There's some pictures of them sitting in Prabhupada's rooms there. And the Shalagram Shila is quite substantial. And Prabhupada kept him on his desk. And he was thinking about giving it to the Bombay temple, because, of course, the Juhu temple was also coming up very rapidly. So Prabhupada, up till 74, 75, he had not attempted to introduce Shalagram Shila worship in his temples. He wanted his pujaris to be more purified before they were allowed to worship Shalagram Shila. Nowadays, it's become a fashion. But Prabhupada was very careful about who he allowed to worship the Shalagram Shilas. So after saying that he would probably give him to the temple authorities or pujaris in Bombay, then Prabhupada changed his mind and he sent me to bring in Pradyumna Prabhu. So Pradyumna and his wife and child were traveling with Prabhupada, doing the editing work and typing from his books on the spot, so to speak. So Prabhupada called for Pradyumna and he showed him the Shalagram Shila. He said, now, if you like, I'll give you this Shalagram Shila to worship. So Pradyumna was very happy to accept. Prabhupada even complimented him. He said, everybody calls him Panda. Panda. Pundit, yes, Pundit. Everybody calls him, Pradyumna Pundit. So he knows Sanskrit and so many things.
Panditji, he was called by Prabhupada.
Panditji, yes, thank you. So Prabhupada told him, you take this Shalagram Shila, every day you bathe in, then, you put a little silk chadar on, paint the face on, and then you make an offering of some fruit. And that's it. It takes 30 minutes to do the whole thing. So you keep him with you. You begin to worship immediately. I think Prabhupada even gave him like a small Viasa for the Shila. And he told him, now you begin immediately. If for some reason you're unable to complete the worship one day, then your wife can do it. And eventually you can train up your son to do it also. So that was a very special honor, I think, that Prabhupada gave encouragement to Pradyumna Prabhu. So the funny thing was that it wasn't so funny, but what happened was that after about a week, we left Hyderabad and went back up to Delhi, and we celebrated Radhastami there. And at that time, they'd just gotten this new building. It wasn't new, but I mean, for us, it was new. The old, when I first went there in 1975, they had this very tiny little place at Bengali markets. But later on, they got this house at Lajpat Nagar 3. And it was like a semi-detached house. So there was some lawn and grounds. It was much better than the previous place. So when Prabhupada flew up to Delhi, they took him to the New Delhi temple. Prabhupada came in. There wasn't very much room. They got this Viasa. I don't know where they got it from, but it was huge. And it was kind of occupying half the room in front of the deities. And Prabhupada didn't say anything. He greeted Radha Parthasarati, and then he went back to the back of the room and mounted his Vyasa. Then all the devotees started coming forward and offering flowers. Lokanath Maharaj's men were there. They were doing traveling bullock sankirtan, and there were about half a dozen young men that were ready for initiation. Our Atmatatva Prabhu, he was one of them. So anyway, Prabhupada's on the Vyasa, is receiving the worship of the devotees, but he's looking here and there around the room. And then he called me over and he said, where is Pradyumna? So I said, I don't know, I'll go and find him. So as the kirtan continued, I went round the building, I came upstairs, and he was in a room there with his Shalagram Shila, and he was doing his puja. So I went downstairs, I reported to Srila Prabhupada that he's doing his puja, Prabhupada. Prabhupada got really angry. He said, first Guru Puja, you go and tell the nonsense. First Guru Puja, then other. So I went and told Pradyumna that. And I said, Prabhupada's really not upset, really not happy with you. He immediately stopped what he was doing and rushed down into the temple room. Prabhupada gave him the eye. So that's another instance where Prabhupada emphasized that worship of the Guru is more important than worship of, Krishna, Radha Krishna, and Lakshmi Narayana, etc. The worship of the Lord is, in one sense, subordinate to the worship of the Lord's devotee. And Prabhupada made sure that we got our priorities correct on that. So I don't know, now it's, what time are we going on till?
Till 8:30 we thought, Prabhuji.
Well, it's 20 to 9 where I am.
Yeah, so we have Ananya Prabhu also.
Okay, I don't want to take up anybody else's. Anyway, there's lots of stories. There was another visit to Hyderabad in December of '76, where Prabhupada went to receive the deeds for the land at Medchal. That's a whole history in itself. So I had some fortune there in seeing Prabhupada in action in South India. Vasu Ghosh Prabhu knows so much from living there. I was a visitor at most. But anyway, I hope everybody found this Krishna Katha to be suitable for your enlivenment. And I'm very thankful to you all to enable me to speak a few words about His divine grace. So thank you all very much. May I switch off now? Am I due for something else? Or
Thank you very much for giving your valuable time.
okay, I hope that was all very edifying. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. It was really nectar from you. We are very fortunate we have with us now His Grace Ananya Prabhu. Before we start, I'd like to give a short introduction about Prabhuji. Prabhuji is born in France in 1946. March 1971, Prabhuji started journey from France to India to study Indian civilization and temples. And then he got connected to ISKCON at Darbhanga, Bihar. There he met His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj and in around April 1972, and he also met other disciples of Srila Prabhupada like Yeshwanand Maharaj, Guru Kripa. He joined ISKCON in Kolkata in 1972 April, got initiated by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada on 11th November 1972 in Vrindavan. He came to Hyderabad and participated in life membership programs and organizing programs in Hyderabad and around. Then Prabhuji started serving as Telugu BBT in charge, and he is maintaining it in past 43 years. So, and we are very fortunate to have Prabhuji in Hyderabad. We can see Prabhuji every day in morning program. Past 48 years, Prabhuji is there in Hyderabad, and Prabhuji is known for his humility. There's so many things we can speak about Prabhuji, but we'd like to hear from him. It's already late. So we like to welcome His Grace Ananya Prabhu by chanting loudly one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Hare.
Hare Krishna. So I have a few minutes. We are very happy to have this book, Prabhupada in South India, which have been compiled by Rashika Das Prabhu. And that contains all the preaching activities of Srila Prabhupada in South India, Hyderabad, Tirupati, Madras, Nellore, Visakhapatnam, Rajahmundry. It is a very important publication, especially for those, not only for the new generation, even for the old generation also, they can remember what Srila Prabhupada has done in South India. And for the new generation, especially for all generations to come, in the future, they see the document, historical document and spiritual document that establishes Srila Prabhupada's mission in South India. So we are very grateful to Rashika Prabhu to have compiled this book in a very comprehensive manner. And I'm sure that we'll be able to go through this book and take the benefit of Srila Prabhupada Association in Hyderabad and other places. We should always remember, of course, how this temple, like Hyderabad temple, how did it come out? Hare Krishna. how this temple came out by the endeavor of our different disciples of Srila Prabhupada, especially, I would like to mention especially Mahamsa Swami, at that time who took Sannyas Diksha in 1973 here in Hyderabad. He had joined in, he had studied in Canada, coming from a Pune Parsi family, and he had studied in Canada and became attracted by the Hare Krishna movement there. Then he joined there, and he came to India, to Bombay. Then he became instrumental in organizing many programs in Gujarat and other places. And then he was asked to come to Hyderabad. So, but the first program in Hyderabad in November 1972, a 15-day program had been arranged. That was the first preaching program for Srila Prabhupada in South India. That was organized by the team of disciples from Calcutta, headed by Bhavananda Prabhu. So it was very well organized program. There was a committee of most important business community. They had arranged for a program at the exhibition ground, and they did a lot of publicity, so much so that when Srila Prabhupada came after the Vrindavan program, where Prabhupada had given lecture on the nectar of devotion and given initiation to some of his new disciples. So Prabhupada came to Hyderabad directly from Vrindavan and gave lectures for about 2 weeks here in Hyderabad in a very well attended program in the heart of the city, attended by the, you can say, the important people of the city. So it was the launching pad, it was the starting point of the Srila Prabhupada's mission in Hyderabad. And from here, Hyderabad being the base, you can say, became the starting point for going to other places in South India. So I'd like to read a few lines from this book, Prabhupada in South India. So on Thursday, November 16, 1972, Srila Prabhupada arrived from Vrindavan, having spent Kartik at Radha Damodar. He was visiting Hyderabad for the first time to attend a 14-day Pandat program organized by ISKCON at the city's famous exhibition ground. Besides the devotees from Calcutta temple who organized the program, a large contingent of devotees arrived by train from Vrindavan, Calcutta, and Mayapur to take part in the festivities. So Haripasa Prabhupada says he is a leading Marwari businessman here at that time. So the first Pandat program was at exhibition ground. About 50 or 60 devotees had come. Their lodging and boarding arrangement was done by me at my residence in Begum Bazar. Prabhupada was put up at Panalat PT's residence. So in the Begum Bazar, there was no place, ISKCON had no place, but very kindly, Haripasad Prabhupada made arrangements for the devotees to stay at Jagadish Lodge in Begum Bazar. So it was near to the exhibition ground where the program was going on. So Prabhupada always stayed at the residence of Panalat PT in Somajiguda, which is a very posh area of Hyderabad. Panalat PT was a very big Marwari businessman and the richest man in Hyderabad. He was also an industrialist and owned salt mines on the Bombay coastline. He was a very important person and was the leader of the Marwari community in Hyderabad. He was a very pious man until the ISKCON temple was built. Whenever Prabhupada came to Hyderabad, he used to stay at the PT residence. So Prabhupada came 6 times to Hyderabad, starting from November 72, then March 1973, April 74, like this, April 75, August 76, and December 76. So Srila Prabhupada gave a lot of mercy to the Hyderabad, and all the disciples here in Hyderabad were always very much enlivened by Srila Prabhupada's visits and programs. So this is how the Hyderabad temple became prominent more and more as the year passed. So on Friday, November 17, the inaugural day of the Pandal program, there was a Sankirtan parade through the streets of the city. Srila Prabhupada followed behind the Sankirtan party in an open-top car and waved to the crowds as he passed by. So that was the Harinam Sankirtan in Hyderabad. Was very important. At the Pandal program, in the evening, Prabhupada gave a lecture based on Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 12th sloka. Large crowds attended the Prabhupada's lectures, and wherever he went, even while getting in and out of his car, people surrounded him, and in order to receive his blessings, many tried to touch his lotus feet. Yeah, I remember that when Prabhupada, at the end of his lecture, many people used to come to the dais, to the stage where Prabhupada was sitting on the Viasa side. Prabhupada would get up and leave the exhibition ground. But at that time, people used to come and try to touch his lotus feet. So, especially Tamal Krishna Goswami was very careful that nobody should be able to touch Prabhupada's lotus feet. So there was some type of a protective circle around the Prabhupada so that people may not disturb Prabhupada in that manner. In southern India, there are many staunch impersonalists, and the Mayavad philosophy known as Advaitavad, propounded by Adi Sankaracharya, is deep-rooted among the population. Being acutely aware of this fact, during his lecture, Srila Prabhupada very expertly exposed the failings of impersonal philosophy. So in this book, you'll have Prabhupada lecture, at least some condensed lectures everywhere. It has been reproduced in this book. So Prabhupada says in his lecture, so the Mayavadi theory that impersonal, how does it stand? Neither God is impersonal, nor the living entities are impersonal. Every one of us, person. The difference between the Supreme Person and our personality is that he is all powerful. We are limited. Our power is limited. Everything, ours, limited. Anu, Vibhu. He is great. We are small. He is infinite. We are infinitesimal, very small. Otherwise, in all other qualities, we are one. Arjuna was calculating as a human being about Krishna. That was his mistake. That was his inquiry to clear the mistake we make. We mistake Krishna as one of us because Krishna comes down just like a human being. Due to our lack of knowledge, profound of knowledge, we think Krishna is as good as we are, but actually it is not. Krishna is God. We are ordinary living entities. His knowledge, his power of remembrance, his power of knowing everything perfectly is different from our knowing. But unfortunately, we think God may be little greater than we. That is Dr. Freud's philosophy. We have explained several times. Kupa Munduka Nyaya, the fall within the world. He is calculating the dimension of Pacific Ocean. So by this philosophy, we cannot understand what is God. We must receive the knowledge of God from God himself, or from a person who knows God. Otherwise, there is no possibility of understanding. So Srila Prabhupada was very much eager to preach in South India because the Mayavad philosophy was very prominent, especially in places like Madras and other, of course, the Shankaracharya of Sringeri is there, very famous, very respected by all people. So people don't have the proper understanding of the Vaishnava philosophy, and they are carried away by this Mayavad philosophy. So Prabhupada coming to South India was to expose the Mayavad philosophy and propound the Vaishnava philosophy. So that is why he had a great hope that our preaching in South India should be very strong, so that eventually the Sankaracharya's philosophy should be defeated. So we can remember in that context that Atudananda Swami, Yasodananda Swami, they went to Sringeri to meet the Sankaracharya. The senior Sankaracharya was living on the top floor of his ashram, and Atudananda Swami, even Shankabrit also was there, newly initiated. So when this Shankaracharya saw Shankabrit, he was quite surprised. How you look like a very good South Indian Brahmana, how you are joining these Westerners like that. Then Shankabrit said, no, I was just a student, and I've been attracted by the teaching of the ISKCON society, so I joined like this. So anyway, the Shankaracharya started to speak to Achyutananda Swami, telling that all of you here, see, these Westerners, in your earlier in your life, you were eating cow, is it not? You were eating cow? Achyutananda Swami said, yes, we were eating cow, yes. Then how is it possible? It is the biggest sin to eat cow. And how now you are putting the Brahmin thread on your body? So that is completely wrong. You are not at all qualified to wear the Brahmin thread because of this grave sin of cow flesh eating. So then Achyutananda Swami then started arguing. Then he asked the senior Sankaracharya, Swamiji, can you tell us one thing? That which is more powerful, the negative effect of cow flesh eating or the redeeming power of the chanting of holy names of Lord Krishna? You please tell me, enlighten us, which is more powerful? Is it not a fact that anyone chanting the holy names of Lord Krishna has all these sinful activities completely, the sinful papa karma is completely eradicated? Is it not a fact? Then the Sankaracharya, he knew, of course, although he's a Mayavadi, but he knew about the power of the Lord's holy name. And he could not contradict Achyutananda Swami. And he became speechless. He had no argument. The one single argument I could understand he could defeat in this, but in a very sophisticated manner. The Sankaracharya in this way was defeated by the argument of Achyutananda Swami. And he said, yes, all right. Now you can go down and you meet my junior Sankaracharya. Thank you very much. He could not say anything else than that. Then downstairs, Achyutananda Swami and others, they met the junior Sankaracharya. He was accompanied by the teacher, Sanskrit teacher, who was also a Mayavadi. So there they had a conversation, and Achyutananda Swami had some, gave some quotation from his Upanishad that Tattam Purushana Parvinu, what is that? Satyasya Pihitam Mukham. These Mayavadi, they consider God to be impersonal. So Achyutananda Swami quoted this Upanishad. Satyasya Pihitam Mukham. Mukham means face. Or you remove this Hiranmayena Patrena, you remove this impersonal glare surrounding your body. I want to see your face. That is the prayer of the devotee to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Achyutananda Swami recited this sloka from the Upanishad, this junior Sankaracharya, he was so surprised. How is it possible? He is an American boy. What does he know about the Upanishads? He was so surprised. And quoting a relevant verse from his Upanishad, how God is a person, the personality of Godhead. So in this way, after defeating the senior, the junior also became completely defeated. And so that was how they visited the Sringeri Math. When Srila Prabhupada came to know about this, he was very happy, very happy. Prabhupada wanted that we should face to face, we should completely confront this Mayavad philosophy and defeat them by sound shastric arguments. So he glorified Achyutananda Swami in this manner, that he has rightly defeated this Sankaracharya. So now it's already 9 o'clock. So I will simply, I want that this book should be in everybody's hand, and go through reading this book, and you will get so much enlightenment, and benefit from this reading. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for enlightening us and sharing the nectar from this book. Also, we have recorded video of His Grace Rashika Prabhu. Before I share that video, we'll have a short introduction about Prabhuji.
Okay.
His Grace Rashika Prabhu was born in England in 1948. He joined the Hare Krishna movement in 1972 and received direct initiation from His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada in April 1973 at Bhaktivedanta Manor, London. In 1975, Rashika Prabhu traveled to India and the holy city of Vrindavan, where he became one of the first temple priests at ISKCON's newly opened Krishna Balram temple. In the early 80s, Rashika Prabhu became the leader of one of the Vrindavan's most successful traveling Sankirtan parties, which set new records in book distribution and life membership enrollment. During that time, Rashika Prabhu was acknowledged as an accomplished singer of Gaudiya Kirtana and performed at festivals in many parts of North India. During his sojourn in India, Rashika Prabhu has traveled the length and breadth of the subcontinent and has visited all the important holy places from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Being deeply attached to the holy land of Lord Krishna, Rashika Prabhu resides in Vrindavan Dham even today, where he is engaged in various aspects of research and writing, as well as publishing books. Rashika Prabhu is now considered to be one of the world's leading authorities on the subject of Vrindavan Dham and the holy places connected to Lord Krishna's pastime. His numerous books about Vrindavan are read throughout the world and by those who are interested in understanding the deeper mysteries of Lord Krishna's sacred abode, where he performed his pastimes. His Grace Rashika Prabhu's personal experience and spiritual realizations after having lived in India and the holy land of Vrindavan for over 45 years is adequately conveyed through his writings, and those who read these books find themselves immediately transported to the higher spiritual realm. And Prabhuji also had wrote this very special book for all of us, Srila Prabhupada in South India, which is going to be launched tomorrow on the occasion of God Purnima. So without taking any more time, I will like to share that video of His Grace Rashika Prabhu from Vrindavan. So
Glories to Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. All glories to Sri Gaunitai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And all glories to the ISKCON devotees of Hyderabad. I was very fortunate I had the opportunity to write a book about Srila Prabhupada's preaching and activities in South India. Having first written a book about Prabhupada's activities in Delhi, his early preaching in Delhi and the opening of the Radhapatha Study Mandir. Those who read that book, they felt that I was the devotee who was qualified enough to write a book about Prabhupada in South India. No book had ever been written before about Prabhupada's activities in South India, so I felt it was a wonderful opportunity to hear all the memoirs from the various devotees and also compile such a book. I felt this was a great benediction by Srila Prabhupada, that I was able to be a part of that project. We had a lot of support from the research team, including Kalai Selvam and Suresh Prabhu's, and our editor, Jagannath Mishra, our proofreader, Krishna Kanta. So overall it was a large, a big endeavor. It took us 1 year to compile all of the information, all of the memoirs of devotees. I think at least perhaps some 30 devotees contributed memoirs for the book from various parts of the world. Those who served in South India with Srila Prabhupada. And it took us a lot of efforts to edit all of those memoirs and put them into place. Hari Sori also contributed his unpublished memoirs of his visits to Hyderabad with Prabhupada in 1976. And other great contributors were, of course, Mahamsa Swami, who was the president of the Hyderabad temple for many years, and Yashodananda Swami, who traveled in India, in South India for many years, was also part of the Hyderabad preaching project, and Vasukosh, and of course Anandamaya, who was one of the stalwarts of the Hyderabad temple. This book actually comprises some 950 pages, the full version. We also produced a abridged version, a limited edition, that comprises of 350 pages. And each book has a lot of the classical photographs of Prabhupada in South India, and some very wonderful photographs also. And while writing, one gets a clear picture of Prabhupada's ambition for South India. Factually, Prabhupada spent some 70 70 days in South India preaching. And of those, 57 days are spent in Hyderabad alone. So Prabhupada had a very important object in establishing ISKCON in Hyderabad. Prabhupada thought that Hyderabad was the central city of South India. It was also called the gateway of South India. And Prabhupada, whenever the opportunity came, he would travel to Hyderabad to preach. And even in 1972, his first preaching mission to Hyderabad, he spent over 15 days over there, preaching and making life members. And it was a very successful program. During that program, the first rains of the monsoon season came, and everybody claimed that this was due to Prabhupada's preaching activities, due to the Harinam Sankirtan performed by the devotees. And it became reported in all the newspapers also that Hare Krishna's had brought rain to Hyderabad after many years of drought. It was a severe drought in South India, but once the Hare Krishna festival started, within a few days a heavy downpour of rain came. And everyone recognized this was due to the Hare Krishna movement. And Prabhupada said many times that due to our chanting of the holy names, due to Sankirtan Yajna, the rains came in Hyderabad. Prabhupada emphasized also in Hyderabad the farm project. In 1976, Prabhupada spent 15 days at the Hyderabad farm, hoping that this Hyderabad farm would develop into a Krishna-conscious farming community, self-sufficient farming community, and would be a forebearer of the Varnashram system that Prabhupada wanted introduced all over the world. Varnashram Dharma is an important aspect of Prabhupada's preaching, and Prabhupada wanted that farm project to be very successful. Prabhupada met a lot of important people in Hyderabad, and amongst them Mr. Badruka. He was a very favorable life member and did a lot of service to Prabhupada. Prabhupada had very great affection for Hare Prasad Badruka. And it was Hare Prasad Badruka who supported the mission in the early days, along with G. Pullareddy, who donated the land. They were very much favorable to establishing ISKCON in Hyderabad. Before that, there was no Krishna temple in Hyderabad. ISKCON was the first Krishna temple, and more than that, Radha Krishna temple. So the entire Indian community of Hyderabad were very favorable. And in Hyderabad, there's a large community of Marwari business people. So they're all devotees naturally of Krishna and Radha. So they became enthusiastic supporters of ISKCON Hyderabad. And we saw in the early days that there's a very enthusiastic community of devotees attending Hyderabad temple. And that community is expanding all the time. And this book that we've written is meant for the devotees and for the community, not only of Hyderabad, of all the temples in South India, including Bangalore, Tirupati, Madras, Nellore, Rajamundry, and Visakhapatnam, as well as other branches that have opened throughout the south. So this book gives a very clear perception of Prabhupada's mission in the south, his style of preaching, his strong attack on Mayavad philosophy, his presentation of Lord Chaitanya's teachings of the holy name, chanting of the holy name, following the principles of Krishna consciousness, and establishing ISKCON centers in every town and village. This was Prabhupada's mission in the south. He spent some 75 days in the south, so that was quite extraordinary as it was. He never spent so much time in other places. So we can see that Prabhupada had a great desire to spread Lord Chaitanya's mission in the south and to establish ISKCON temples far and wide. And we see today that that mission is expanding. There are more and more devotees, more and more temples in the south. And in the south we find a very good quality of devotee, very educated class of men are joining ISKCON in South India. and pushing forward the movement in all levels of the society. So this book will be a great valuable part of preaching, that we can also see Prabhupada's lectures, his room conversations, morning walks, and other things where he is preaching specifically to South Indian devotees, specifically to the community of the South Indian people, where many of the acharyas like Ramanuja and Madhava have preached before. So Prabhupada was emphasizing that Krishna consciousness is a natural thing for the South Indian people. There are many thousands of Vaishnavas in the South, but Prabhupada wanted that Krishna consciousness should be the primary religion amongst all Vaishnavas, that all Vaishnavas should recognize the contribution of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all Vaishnavas should take up the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, the Hare Krishna mantra. And in this way, everyone's life will become perfect.
So thank you all very much for joining us for this session on Srila Prabhupada in South India. And tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. on the special occasion of Gaur Purnima, we will be having the book launch of this special book by His Grace Rajshekhar Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada in South India. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.